Howdy there neighbors, Ian with eTrailer here. Today we're going to be looking at the REDARC Tow-Pro Liberty and the Elite on our 2019 Ram 1500. Let's look at some features of it and then get into that install. First we'll take a look at the Elite. It is going to be the more premium option over the Liberty. Part of the reason is it's got the options for a user-controlled mode, which is beneficial for off-road driving or high incline driving. It's going to override the gain system and put more application to the brakes on the trailer opposed to the vehicle, extending the vehicle's brake life. And then our Liberty here is going to be the lower end option. It will only do 12-volt systems, while the Elite will do up to 24-volt. Again, with the Liberty opposed to the Elite, you're going to see that this will do 2 axles, and then the Elite will allow for up to 3 if need be. So something to keep in mind when you're selecting these. This is probably, in my opinion, going to be my favorite brake controller. If I'm going to put one in my vehicle, it's going to be either the Elite or the Liberty. Both great options, but they do have a little bit of difference, and depending on what you're towing, you'll have to select between the two. But the Elite is just such a clean look. It keeps everything 90% factory as far as all the connection points and how to mount things up. It does come with a cutout that you can use on particular vehicles. Doesn't work with the Ram here, but we were able to find a punch out that makes it look very factory compared to maybe a big brake controller sitting underneath your knee at the dash here. So if you're worried about knee knock and having more junk in the way, that the REDARC's just going to be the better option in my opinion. The adjustments are very easy. To up the brake force, you just go in that clockwise motion there. You've got all the way up to 10 different levels that it allows you to go up to. The manual override, again, a very easy situation of just pushing that in. With that audible click, you'll be able to tell that that is activated, plus that nice LED indication is wonderful. So this does have the option as well between proportional, which is just going to be the mode that it stays in a majority of the time unless you put it in the user controlled mode. And that user control mode, what it's going to do is apply the trailer brakes in a non-proportional way, to where if you're pushing the brake pedal, it's only running off of the knob in the controller here opposed to your application of the brakes. When in the proportional mode, you'll see this nice blue indicator opposed to the green indicator that's going to come on once you've got it in that user control mode. And to switch control modes here, we've got our blue indication for proportional. I'd like it in user controlled mode. So we would hook up to our trailer or whatever we're towing. We're going to turn the knob all the way counterclockwise, which we've already got it at its lowest setting. Once it's there, we will apply the vehicle brakes, double press the knob within 2 seconds, and you'll see here that it's turned green, and once we release the brakes, it is now in the user control mode opposed to our proportional. Last feature I wanted to talk about was going to be the park brake feature that it's got. It allows for the park brake essentially to be applied at the trailer when the brake is depressed for a 3-second period at a stop. So say you're on an incline, you got vehicles either behind you or in front of you, and you're worried about that roll back or forth into those vehicles when you're stopped. That's going to help keep the brakes on at just the trailer to be able to equally keep you stopped. Now, the install on this isn't too bad. I would imagine that anybody could get away with this in maybe an hour at most. It does take an additional harness from REDARC that's going to go from the factory plug directly to the connector. Let's get into that install. I'll show you where I've got everything mounted and kind of where to position the controller and the switch. To access our factory plug, that's going to be located under the dash right here. So what we'll need to do is take this kick panel off, and to do so there's just 2 Phillips head screws that are holding on the bottom, so we'll remove those. Then we will just give a slight pull starting at one side and then come to the other. What you can do is apply pressure against the rest of the dash and just give this a good snug tug here. And it should just pop loose. There are connections for this little blower motor here. And we can leave the ODB2 in. It's also got this plug and then the connector for the hood release. We're going to leave all that attached, just let that dangle, and then back behind this you'll find a big clump of tape. I've gone ahead and removed the tape, that way we can access the plug to see it. But the factory looming does have two plugs there. We're going to use the one with the 4 prongs. So we'll just leave that here so that way we've got access to it to run the controller. One thing you will need to be able to hook up this Redarc and to make this installation super simple is this Tow-Pro harness here that is offered. It's got the factory plug already set up so that way you don't have to do any cutting or splicing, and then our end for the controller as well, which makes installation super easy. So we will just grab our factory plug, quick connect here onto that. Now we need to mount the controller switch, and it's kind of up to you of how you want to do it, but I've seen a majority of them using where the factory tow package controller would go. This punch out is going to have to come out to be able to trim it down and then get the hole drilled through it so we can have our knob running through. So to remove the dash, we're going to pull this little piece of rubber from the top here, and all it is just a protector for these screws down here at the bottom, both Phillips head, and we'll take those out. And set those aside. And then what I like to do is come to the bottom of the dash, put my thumbs up against the dash, and then we're going to be pulling here at this kind of silver looking area. And it should just pop away nice and easy, and then we will work our way up to the top. And then that falls down. And then we're going to remove our connectors for everything on the back, because we will have to pull the entire block from the bottom here. And that will pop out, and then we'll move down to our connectors here. There's just another little push tab on top. That will come loose, and then the push tab is on the bottom of this square plug. And I did want to mention, as far as this plug and that one, they are slightly different but slightly the same. But this one is marked with blue already. If it's not marked, go ahead and put something on there to identify that it needs to go to this bottom plug opposed to the screen. You wouldn't want to mix those up when going back together. And then last plug at the bottom here, add our auxiliary switches, and the dash is free. Now we're going to bring the center dash panel over to somewhere we can set it. If you need to, just throw cardboard or a piece of foam or something underneath it to keep that from getting scratched at any of the surface points. And then there are going to be a couple screws here at the top. They are both T10s. And so we will remove those 2 screws. And with those removed, there's a total of 4 clips holding this in, 2 at the bottom, and then 2 at the top. We will just apply some downward pressure here and pull up on the tab, and you'll see it kind of slide out of place, and then go to the one on the bottom on that same side, and then apply that pressure there, and repeat on the other side as well, and it should just pop loose so we can access that panel. To remove this cutout, we will go to these 2 plastic tabs and pry up on the retainer. And then same on that back side. Just put good pressure on the edge here and push forward, and that'll allow that to unclip. And then down beneath, we're going to do the same thing. Just prying upwards and pulling out. And then once that's removed, we will cut out this center brace so that way we've got a nice spot to be able to mount that controller knob. We trimmed all of the plastic that was in the center bracing there, and then used a 10mm drill bit to be able to get our plastic nut that holds the switch into place. So now that we've got all that set up, you just run that switch through there, and there's a lip here on the bottom of the switch, and so we're just going to run that knob through there and then tighten this down. It can just be done by hand since it's plastic. We wouldn't want to strip that out. And as we're putting the switch in, we want to make sure that this is level and going to be set up correctly. Also, you want to check to make sure that once you've got it tightened down, that the knob will still be able to be pressed in. Should be able to hear the audible click. We're just going to reassemble the dash, running that wire through the bracket where the auxiliary switches are. This will just clip back into that bracket. Then we're going to feed the bracket here into the dash. Again, listening for that audible click to make sure it's in place, and then replace the 2 T10 screws that are on the outside. And then we're going to take our wire from the controller knob here, and we're going to go right above this plastic part of the box. There's actually a little hole we can feed this through right in the back. So we'll just take that end, and then we'll feed all of this line down through that hole, and then we're going to reconnect all of the harness connectors. Again, the one with the blue tape mark is going to be going below the screen, while the one that does not have the blue tape mark will be connecting to the screen. And then we're just going to gently set this back into place. And that should just snap back into that front. Now we're going to mount the controller box. We're going to take the adapter harness that we've got from our factory wiring and just hook that directly to the Elite here. And then as far as mounting locations, the only thing the instruction mentions is that you should not hook this to a wiring harness. It needs to be hooked to something fixed that's not going to have any shift or movement to it. And there's a few brackets towards the center of the dash here that you can kind of see through this top hole, and I'm going to mount that to those. So first I want to make sure I've got all of my connections on there to include the one that's coming from the switch, and that just plugs into the bottom here as well. And now we can mount that box up. We'll just use a couple zip ties. Again, this is kind of up to you and what you can find once you're under the dash of where to mount it, but I'm going to pick this cross beam back here and just zip tie it to it. And there you can see where I've mounted the box. I did use the zip ties to keep the harnesses out of the way. That includes that adapter harness, because since they're pre-made harnesses, they're pretty long, but I'd rather have them too long than too short, so it's just easier to keep that area under the dash clean. Once we've got that all hooked up, and even before you put the dash back in, if you wanted to test to make sure you're getting power at the switch and that the controller is talking to it, just give it a good push and it'll light up blue. Now to get proper orientation of the switch, we're going to turn that all the way counterclockwise until it stops, and then we will put the 0 at the very top, and that will set it so that way when we go to adjust the levels as they increase, it will have the proper setting. And once we've got everything installed and in place, you're going to see that the knob will be flashing blue and green, which means it's ready for calibration. What you'll want to do is drive the vehicle and apply the brakes. This can take a bit of time for it to learn the orientation. What that's doing is at the controller box, it's trying to figure out which way it's positioned, so that way the inertia reader within it can get the proper reading. So you'll just kind of go around a safe area, make sure you've got enough room to be able to stop and continue to stop occasionally, just getting up to 5, maybe 10 miles at most an hour, and then braking, coming to a complete stop. That way it can get through the calibration. And then once calibrated, you'll see that it will turn a nice solid blue color. And that's going to be the look at and installation of our REDARC on our 2019 Ram 1500. My name's Ian with eTrailer. Thanks for watching.